Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. I'm your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, coming with Black Minds News. Today's date, July 17, 2019. What I got on the menu for today? I know I've been pumping them, y'all. Gotta do what I gotta do, right? So, today being July 17, in 1964, one of our most revered ancestors, Malcom X, Shabazz, spoke on an interview making this trip to Africa for a conference. And let's look at what Malcolm said in 1964, how today those, again, is BADOS, ADOS, trying to position themselves, and there's some stagnation coming from those who won't align and say that we're divisive against those of the family of Africans. And somehow we seem to be shine with the light as if we are against them. Now, is that true? Is that really true? And when Malcolm went in 1964, did he say something? And are the examples prior to Malcolm getting in 64 that laid a foundation as who's really wasn't supporting who or turning a blind eye? Now, I'm going to say it was with intent, but Malcolm wanted to bring it to the attention, and that's what this particular video is going to show, as giving commemoration to my ancestor, Malcolm X, Shabazz, and this is Black Minds News. Also, I'm going to give you a story about an incident that took place prior before 1964 that happened with African heads trying to just, eat. Well, you'll hear about that. We'll talk about it. Again, this is Black Minds News, and this show is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate for goodness, inspire. We give honor to the Most High, the Creator, because why? He don't need no partners. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that you call the United States, we as BADOS, Black American descendant of slave. Some say Black African descendant of slave. Others say American descendant of slaves. We give honor to our ancestors. What my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. This is today's show. Stay tuned for this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing? Once again, this is the Black Minds News, and I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind. Again, this is July 17, 2019. And again, I want to first and foremost thank the subscribers who are taking the time to hit these one-hitters, as they are doing a little bit for the channel, right? Trying to build it back up. Decide not to do it and do it in the one-hitters. And you participating is helping me to get that. Still can't get out to a broader audience. But again, that's just helping me to build my case because I want the check. You understand? I want the check. So anyway, first and foremost, family, what's good to y'all? Passerbys, again, if you should be going up under the ocean, fall into a cavern. The cavern somehow take you to the highest mountain on the pole. You fall and come up out of there and fall on a goat. The goat bucks your ass off, somehow you fall into another hole and stumble and get up over to the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. We welcome you. Browse around. See if you see something. There's always a grand opening over here. See through the library, might see something you like, but if you should just happen to see something that might just disturb you and think, that ain't what I'm trying to hear. But again, that's what the truth do. It don't need no partner. So just gird yourself up, strengthen up, come back and come for another dose. Hit that like button, subscribe button, and share button, and do all that stuff. And we welcome you over here to Black Minds News. Now let's get into this, right? You know, there's this kind of unspoken kind of, let's say, unspoken, but let's say it's an unspoken conversation or feeling that black Americans and people, whether from the Caribbeans or from the continent, as if there's some problem we got with each other. As if one don't like the other, and somehow the stigmatization about black Americans see that we do everything to not want to be considered ourselves Africans. Now that might be some, that's not all. They say some but all, right? Some but all, right? And due to maybe just, if you could put yourself, and if maybe you might be a person who is an orphanage, or parents that put them into the state, been neglected, allow them to go through the ordeal of living in that environment and maybe going through some traumatic situations. And then later on, as they get older, been around some time, and now they done recognize what kind of parent you is, do you blame the child for having animosity towards the parents or parent? Is it their fault that they feel some kind of way? Or does the parent have to be sympathetic and trying to be tolerable until either you, as the parent or parents, lay out the foundation and work to let the child understand what took place? Why the situation was, and why did we come to the understanding that we had to make this to happen for you? Then, isn't it upon the child whether to accept or at its own turn gradually get back in favor with you? Can the parents demand for you to automatically have love for them? Or is it a process? And sometimes in the process, it never get healed. Some of the children, let's say it's more than one child, maybe say it's a family of children, and they got put in the situation. Some of the children might be more forgiving than others. Some may be on the fence, and others will say, I'm never going to forgive you. Now, depending on the category that you fall in, they're all merited in their own sense. But is it incumbent on the child to hear the parent's situation to make a better informed decision about how you're going to take your stance? So let's say that the child tried everything in his ability to try to make some recommends with it, but the parent was slow about responding. You understand? Was slow about how they was going to get back to you. So how long is the child to sit in the window when mommy's saying it's coming to get you, and every car that come by, you think that's daddy. You fall asleep. Days go by, weeks go by, months go by. Now, what happens? That child builds a resentment towards you. That child hears your name, it don't resonate with them, right? So why is it that people who come from those situations, when they come around us, act as if like, that scenario I just gave you, you don't understand that. They would rather say that we somehow have some formulation of love for our oppressor. We got Stockholm Syndrome, when it's the furthest thing from the truth. Why is it everybody could tell us about us, but if we tell you about us and talk about you, we don't understand what we're talking about? So, I'm going to play this for you. Let you see what Malcolm said at this particular time about this. Again, he was making this track over to Africa, and he wanted to lay out something. He wanted to make a reminder. Now, listen to the words that our ancestor Malcolm X, Malcolm Little, Malik L. Shabazz said on July 17, 1964.
Malcolm, what is your purpose here?
Well, my purpose here is to remind the African heads of state that there are 22 million of us in America who are also of African descent, and to remind them also that we are the victims of America's colonialism or American imperialism, and that our problem is not an American problem, it's a human problem. It's not a Negro problem, it's a problem of humanity. It's not a problem of civil rights, but a problem of human rights.
And what do you hope for from this conference?
Well, we hope to bring pressure upon them, or rather we hope to impress upon them the importance of their bringing pressure and world opinion upon the United States to take some meaningful effort to solve our problem in America. We want them to help us get our problem before the United Nations and charge America with violating our human rights in the same way that South Africa is charged with violating the human rights of our people in that area.
And what sort of reaction have you been getting from the African leaders?
Well, I've gotten a good reaction, a very sympathetic reaction, and an understanding reaction. Many of them had been misinformed by the American government into thinking that black people in America don't identify with Africa, and therefore they've restrained themselves from voicing their interest in our problem. But I've impressed upon them that our problem is their problem, as well as their problems are our problem.
All right, so you heard directly from the mouth of Malik L. Shabazz. And again, this was an interview that was done with Malcolm X as he got to Africa, and there was a conference being held, right? And he said that his purpose for this trip was to remind the African leaders or heads of the African states that there was 22 million black Americans. And again, he stressed that. Black Americans. Again, African American, as I say on this show a lot, African Americans would be anybody who has ancestry, lineage tied back to the continent. So you could be Caribbean, you could be from any other place. If you got that, you could be an African American in the United States. Black Americans have a distinct aspect to their history as the blood lineage and so forth that is in this land. That those who come here know when they meet one, they actually know. But again, there's always the distinction because, again, you come from your own place. Even though you may be first generation, second generation, so forth. Again, this ain't here to be no hate. This is just to make some reason we have to look at this is because people try to act as if like the hate starts with us. And this is not to say that this is what it is, but let's just look at this. Let's look at this. Let's see, again, as my analogy talked about, child being put, a family of children been put in a foster care by the parent, right? So you see Malcolm talked about 22 million black Americans of that time who are, as Malcolm X said, of African American descent. Now, he said African American descent. He distinguished black Americans, but he said African American descent. And that he wanted to remind them that we, as the black Americans of the United States, were victim of colonialism, or he said American imperialism. Now, again, to remind them is to recall the mind that, hey, wait a minute, you know you got some family over here, and there's about 22 million of them. And since you guys are now using the apparatus of politics in the United Nations, you know you got family over there, right? You know what's going on over there, right? Right? This is what Malcolm is saying, right? You know what's going on over there, right? He said, and, you know, the problem that we have as black Americans in the United States, right, is a human problem, right? It's not a Negro problem. It's a human problem. He said it's not a civil rights problem. It's a human problem. Now, is elder, ancestor, Malik Shabazz right about that? Was our answer to the problems about civil rights? Stuff we're still dealing with to this day. So that could not have been the answer of what people thought at that particular time would be the remedy to at least start the movement. Was Malcolm right as to human, right? Was he right about that? And so the interviewer goes on and says that, what do you hope from this conference? Well, Malcolm said he wanted to put pressure on them, meaning those of the African heads, the importance of putting pressure on the United States. By what? He said, well, if you take them and, put this world opinion about the things that is happening to your people. Now, again, these are not some separate people. These are your people. These are your family. Historically, you know what took place. So, based on, again, your knowledge of that, and now that you have the position to present it before the world court, why don't you, on behalf of your family of 22 million, go before the world court of the United Nations and get this issue before them, right? And basically he was saying, well, you understand that they're, just like in South Africa, it was violating the human rights. Well, there's similarities to the same situation that's going on in South Africa that you're now bringing. Well, why not you do the same thing with the old, people or, family, those who are in the United States? And so the interviewer actually said, well, how they're taking this. Well, Malcolm said, well, they're very sympathetic to it, right? And that Africa, a lot of the heads had been misformed, that, somehow through their interactions with the government, somehow they was getting twisted in the mind to believe that black Americans at this time didn't like Africans. Right? Now keep this in mind. This is what someone is telling Malcolm X, that this is what was told to them, right? Now, these are heads of the states. Now, they convene in Africa. They got their conventions and things, and all the heads of states get together. So, again, I got something I want to show to say, okay, now this is 1964, right? This is 64 when this is taking place, but I got something I want to show you, though. So, he said, based on what transpired between the conversations of them and that of the government, that it restrained the heads in Africa to act upon what was taking place with their 22 million family members here, as we are called the Black Americans, BADOS, the ADOS, right? This is what they said. Well, they were hesitant because, again, they don't like us, so fuck it, we don't like them. Huh? Now, wait a minute, okay now. Now, here we is now, 2019, and people always want to sit here and talk about somehow, we don't like you. Yeah? Let's slow this down, because it ain't right. See, again, we the children in the foster care. We the ones our parents put us up for adoption. They the one gave us to the state. Now, it may not be both parents. Maybe daddy had to leave or whatever, and mama did and couldn't do it, and she did. Okay, but again, historically, we really know what that situation was, right? And again, we don't say everyone, but we're just going to say. So again, let's look at it. So they will restrain themselves from dealing with our problems. But Malcolm had to remind them, our problem is your problem. Just like your problem is our problem. And isn't that what we're saying today? What they talking about, those of the Pan-Africanists, they talking about, well, we one African, we come together as unified as one, right? So they say that those who want to be BADOS and ADOS, and somehow they're divisive. They're looking at themselves separate. And you want to be the white man, and right? They say all these things, right? But the truth of the matter is, they've been put in foster care. They've been in for generations. And that what used to be parent made no real attempt that they know of to come and try to take them from that situation. So somebody said, well, that was 1964. They probably didn't know. So again, as he said, well, government told them that, you guys didn't like them and so forth. Well, let me show you something here, right? Let me show you something. Let me show you about an incident that took place in 1961. Yeah. An incident took place in 1961. You want to know what it's called? Well, let me show you it. Let me show you that, huh? The racist diplomatic incident that embarrassed JFK abroad, huh? Yeah, let me show you. When you want to hear this article, check this out. I'll be right back. Hold on. Before I even do that, I'm about to go ahead and do this, right? I got to go ahead and get this little infomercial in first, right? For those who might be sitting here on your hand, this is what I do. This is where you can contribute to my show, right? And that's what we do over here. So let me go ahead and do this first. And let's take care of this first, right? Let's take care of this first. The racist diplomatic incident that embarrassed JFK abroad. You know I'm going to say that again. The racist diplomatic incidents that embarrassed JFK abroad. This story was done February 26, 2019, coming from The History. This is how it reads. The humiliating abuse of African dignitaries under Jim Crow laws helped pressure the government to finally throw its weight behind the civil rights legislation. William Fitzjohn and his driver raced up Route 40 through Maryland, hoping to find a hot meal before the African diplomat meeting at the White House. It was April 1961, and segregation was the status quo in large swaths of the United States. Fitzjohn, the charge d'affaires for the country of Sierra Leone, knew that despite his elite diplomatic status, he might be turned away if he tried to eat in an establishment that discriminated against black people. Fitzjohn had previously heard that the restaurant chain Howard Johnson was open to serving black customers, so his driver headed to one nearby. But when he entered Hagerstown, Maryland, Howard Johnson's, a Shirley waitress told Fitzjohn she wouldn't serve him, even when he showed his diplomatic credentials. She refused to budge. It was very emotionally upsetting, Fitzjohn told an Associated Press reporter afterwards. Fitzjohn's experience became an international incident, prompting a presidential apology and significant publicity. But he was far from the only foreign dignitary to suffer the humiliation of segregation while in the United States. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, African dignitaries and diplomats were repeatedly snubbed, verbally abused, and discriminated against when they spent time in the United States. Their experiences brought international attention to an uncomfortable truth. Despite promoting democracy and fighting authoritarian governments throughout the Cold War, the United States did not recognize or uphold the civil rights of people of color. The disquieting reality of racial discrimination complicated the United States' outreach to newly independent African nations. And, says historian Rene Romano, it helped pressure the government to finally throw its weight behind civil rights legislation. It looked really bad on the world stage, says Romano, a professor of history at Oberlin College. As the Cold War became chiller in the 1960s, racism and discrimination became a glaring problem for President John F. Kennedy's foreign policy. The newly elected president made energetic efforts to tout the United States as a democratic ideal for the rest of the world effort that were threatened by the cruelty of bias and discrimination at home. At the time, Africa was undergoing a dramatic shift as emerging states shook off their colonial bonds. In 1960, 17 African nations declared their independence. It was an exhilarating and precarious moment in international relations, and Kennedy had to determine his approach to the newly minted countries. He saw Africa as a potential hotbed for American-style democracy and made an effort to welcome and host diplomats from the new nations. But once they came to the United States along with their staff, many African dignitaries experienced racial discrimination. Owners and employees of restaurants, barbershops, motels, and other establishments in segregated states discriminated against people based on their skin color, not their diplomatic standings, and African diplomats and their staff were caught up in racist incidents. Route 40, which connected Washington, D.C. with New York, was a particular problem for the diplomats as they traveled from the seat of the United States government to the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan. They encountered the kind of racism that tainted everyday life for black Americans. Dignitaries were ejected from restaurants, subjugated to racial slurs, refused beds in motels, and turned away from private clubs patronized by members of Kennedy's administration. People realized that the eyes of the world were upon us, says Romano. We needed to live up to some of these ideals of democracy and civil rights in order to maintain our international stature and uphold our ideological struggle in the Cold War. The incident didn't just cause problems for the diplomats. When news broke of yet another African dignitary being refused coffee or cursed out by a waitress, it became a fodder for American Cold War enemies. Fitzjohn experienced it. Howard Johnson, for example, was decried in the Soviet Union, which upheld it as an example of American hypocrisy. The USSR even attempted to persuade the United Nations to move its headquarters out of the United States in response to the country's racist law. In response to a threat by African diplomats to leave the country, the United States Department even created the Special Protocol Service Section, a division designed to protect African diplomats from discrimination. Its leaders, Pedro San Juan, quickly realized that the problem wasn't an issue of protocol. It was an issue of racism. But his attempt to expand the State Department attempt beyond African diplomats to help black Americans as well were largely futile. They started in a place very little power, says Romano. The group tried to persuade business owners along Route 40 to serve black patrons and real estate boards to provide housing for black diplomats and their staffs. As San Juan worked to try to make Route 40 more welcoming to African diplomats, he became increasingly convinced that only a legal solution could prevent business owners from discriminating against all black people. As freedom riders and other protesters stayed sit-ins along Route 40, the SPSS pressured state governments and Kennedy's administration to use the law to forbid segregation. When Soviet leaders used discrimination against blacks as an example of American double standards for democracy, made the issue feel even more urgent. There was an international diplomatic interest at stake, says Romano. Eventually, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 forbade public segregation and the SPSS was disbanded, but the agency and the issues faced by visiting diplomats whose skin color ensured an icy welcome to the United States had made a difference, no matter how small. Mass protests and activism ultimately proved far more important in forcing reluctant legislators to do away with the discriminatory laws than pleading by the State Department, notes Romano. But she says the agency did help pressure Kennedy's government to change. The diplomats' humiliating and scary experience with American discrimination helped bring attention to the threats and dignitaries suffered by black people under segregation, a system that saw black skin to the exclusion of all other humans' characteristics. All right, so that was the racial diplomatic incident that embarrassed JFK. Now that goes back to 1961, right? So think about it. This is around the time independence was happening in Africa. And so when they became independent, they again were acclimating themselves into the United Nations, trying to be a part of that, whole political apparatus. But again, I'll talk about it another time, but I got another way of how looking at that. But anyway, so we see that there was a diplomat from Sierra Leone, William Fitzjohn, who was here in the United States in April 1961. Now remember, Malcolm did his trip in 64. So this is about 3 years after this incident, and even before the William Fitzjohn situation, many diplomats who came from the continent, who came here, were experiencing this. So we have to say that what they knew, right? Or did they turn a blind eye, right? They turned a blind eye, right? So we see that William Fitzjohn wanted to get himself a little something to eat before he got to this meeting with President Kennedy. Somehow he goes into this little town, Haggard Town, right? He heard again, the word was that only places that you could travel lodge in was a Howard Johnson. So I guess Howard Johnson had always been for black folks, right? Matter of fact, isn't that where Martin Luther King was supposed to have stayed, right? Was it the Holiday Inn or was it the Howard Johnson? Or it was one of them, but they didn't want him there because again, everybody kind of knew what the program was other than Martin Luther King, right? But anyway, and then we come to find out that he didn't really die there. He died in the hospital, but that's for another time anyway. So anyway, it was in this little Haggard town, right? And he goes in, tries to eat, but this waitress that working there decided, I ain't going to serve this nigga here. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck what. He pulling out credentials. Hey, I am a diplomat. See, those who think because of their status, right? And certain, your uniform you wear lets you know what team you on. It ain't about your credentials. It ain't about all that other stuff. Only thing is what when competition teams, LA got their jerseys. Shit, Houston got theirs, right? And so, you understand? That's how you identify who's on the other team. And so based on, again, if you know anything about the history of Route 40, which I got that, I've been holding it, I just didn't do it because it's pretty long. Since I'm doing one hit, I'm probably going to just do that in itself. Because what you understand about Route 40, Route 40 was that route that goes from Illinois all the way across, then they go right across the whole damn middle of the damn country, damn near, right? You go through a lot of states. But a lot of the establishments that are aligned on Route 40 were sundown towns. So, you understand? He didn't have a green book. I guess the green book, he didn't have a green book. If he'd have known that, he would have known better, right? So anyway, he goes in there, he goes through this whole ordeal. Word gets back. Kennedy's kind of embarrassed about the situation because he's like, damn, hold on, man. This isn't good for us on the world stage. Now, again, going back to what Malcolm X has said, he said he wanted to remind them, right, about what's going on in the colonialism, American imperialism. That, the problem that you see back there is not a Negro problem, it's not a civil rights problem, it's a human right problem. And again, somebody says to him that, well, from my understanding, you guys don't like us. That's an easy way to get out of the situation, isn't it? Huh? It's a whole lot more work if you understand. Knowing you came here, you already got the stories because this was going on in the 50s. Them diplomats was coming here in the 50s getting the same treatment that we was getting, yet they was diplomat and they couldn't understand that, right? So what you were seeing is John F. Kennedy was saying, well, you know what? He was trying to sell the ideal. He said, well, Africa would be a great place for America to get in there and push this democracy. But because they were coming here and they were seeing how this democracy works and how it has as Russia was saying, it had a hypocrisy to it. That's why they always try to say that black folks was going with communism, because democracy in the eyes of us, understanding what democracy of at that time is, if that's democracy, you didn't want no part of that shit. If that's what democracy is, getting your ass hoes, bit by dogs, all this shit going on, why would you want democracy? You said, well, Chuck Willery, let me pick door, was his name, Monty? What's his name for let's make a deal? He said, well, let me give you door number 2. So door number 2 would have been communism. So that's why I feel like a lot of times black people was somehow leaning toward communism. But that was not the truth. It's the fact, again, like having the 2016 election. A lot of people say, well, you guys, you let Donald Trump get in, but it was like shit was two evils. Like, when you got to choose the lesser evil, we just say, well, fuck it, we ain't gonna pick none. There was no choice. You understand? So sometimes when the situation is so goddamn bad, you ain't got no choice. So what is there to choose? So here it is, other people who get the benefits of democracy and then looking at you and saying, well, why are you not so patriotic and all that? Shit, there's double standards here. And even those in other countries are realizing there was a double standard here. And so they realized, they said, well, it has nothing to do with maybe the protocols. It's just pure racism in the country. Well, no shit, Sherlock. That's what it was founded on. Seems like everybody seems to not understand it until they get up and close and get up in the situation until it becomes personal with you. Then now all of a sudden you understand. Now, just imagine, now that y'all know this, again, from the continent's position, now that you know this and you come and see this, shouldn't you have been saying, God damn, man, what are they doing to our people over there? No, motherfuckers come up with that name, they come with a damn term called kata. You call us a katas and shit. Now, again, my analogy is we foster children, right? We get put in there by our parents, and here's our parents over there talking shit about us like we ain't shit. Like, you white man. How we get here? How did the situation get like this? Now, I know some people's going to rough on the wrong way. Again, truth don't need no partner. It is what it's going to be, right? So, what they try to do, they try to put the laws on them. All right, now it's against the law for you to be hating. And they ain't like, oh shit, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do to me? Huh? Right? I go to court. White jurors is not gonna convict me. So how you gonna hold me? So, it was a lot of bullshit. So he took the embarrassment of it, because why? What happened? Now the reputation of the United States was being tainted due to what was happening when those foreign dignitaries and stuff were coming here, right? So we see later in 64, Malcolm goes over there to remind them, hey, it's 22 million over there, right? And one aspect do you want us to, what can y'all do to try to make this a little bit comfortable, to bring this to attention so we can take it on the world stage? You guys don't really like us. Really? Was that really what it is? Or we're just being neglected? And then now in 2019, here's people, now that the spirit and the fire has come up and trying to reinvigorate and say, fuck it, we trying to stand on our own and we're going to try to do this shit and fight our own. Instead of motherfuckers getting on the board and aligning with us, they is just saying we're divisive. They want to say all kinds of shit. They bots. This is how you see where that Russia shit come from now. See? Because to go back to this situation here, we're talking about how they say, well, Russia was trying to use this and say, look, communism, and we'll treat you better than this shit. At least if you do that, we wouldn't do this shit to you, right? Well, I guess somebody, ladies should be hearing me, right? Well, you know, you got a dude that's abusive at home. Nigga crazy as all hell. He type of, I can't have you, nobody can't have you, huh? He type motherfucker come to the club in slippers and, you know what I'm saying? He come in slippers and shorts looking for you at the club because you out there hanging with your girl. He crazy, like he crazy, deranged, as Martin said. Crazy, deranged, right? And here's another motherfucker talking to you nice like, Mr. Blows Your Mind type, right? Coming in saying all some sweet thing out there, you know what I'm saying? We doing, huh? And you got a choice to make. Well, this one sound a little bit better. I don't know until I get in a relationship, until I will get through all the cooing and the wooing. Then I find out what it's really like. But right now, this seems like a better choice. And so this is what their dilemma was. They was looking, they know that everything was better because they know what really was happening here. They know what they really doing. So it's not hard to make another damn choice if somebody got a better proposition to you. So yeah, but see, we've been still going through this the whole time. Still to this day, it's the same ass shit. But everybody trying to act as if like that's a figment of our imagination. See, when the sick person can't see himself and can't be diagnosed because he himself will not diagnose himself. But if you try to diagnose him, there's something wrong with you. And he raising, snarling and crying and snarling at you. And all you trying to do is say, look, man, you need to look at yourself because, again, obviously you can't see your damn self. But we in the position that we live in and we see it on a daily basis, but you can't see how you is, or either you ignoring it or the sickness is so, you know, it done calcified, if that's a word, your whole body to the fact that it's already just at, you know, it's at death's door. Can't know, there's no point of return. So that's just what it is. Now on this day here, July 17, 1964, that you heard is what Malcolm had in the interview. And still to this day, 2019, people come here to the United States from all over and still feel like, based on what we have gone through historically in this land, and when you come here, even when you come here and you see the stuff, you still feel some kind of way in opposition to us, what we have endured. Well, you tell me what you think. You write out how you feel. Again, this is Black Minds News, the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. We're just going to tell like a TI is. Sometimes it's just going to ruffle the feathers sometimes. But again, that's what the truth is. It don't need no partner. And so, again, as I close out on this one here, I want to thank everybody for who came and sit and listen. Until my next show, y'all, stay black, love, and peace and all that good stuff. And my brother out there that's sending me all the articles, I am going to get you in, bro. I just have to get some stuff, get some formulated, then I'm going to get you in, all right? So peace, love, and peace to everybody. To the next one.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Luther and I and everyone in this arena tonight are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on. And it definitely was not prepared for black people to in the end begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they've died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What good news for the sheep might be bad news to the wolf.
They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saying 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You got to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the sixth version.
5 months before me. 3. There are only 2 possible explanations. They were 5 months before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to bits! Fucking kill you! You can't make me do anything like prick!
Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate you.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
Well, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true.
I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now, check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? And I said, Malcolm, I love you. And I said, I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East. And I said, but I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary, booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.